Okay, I just wanted to talk about the lift system on the 1960. I know for 67 and 68 and 69, I know for sure that the lift system is identical, and I believe that it is also identical in the 67s, but you can't quote me on that. What I've got here is this is my camper. This is a 1969 Apache Mesa. The Mesa is the smaller version. If it's a Ramada, they are longer, but the Ramada, it would have the same lift system as the Mesa. These little campers, they were made from 1967 to 1969. After 69, Apache transitioned more to a hybrid canvas and solid state camper in 1970, and then in 71 they went full solid state, and both of those campers have a completely different lift system than these campers. And I thought I'd try my best to explain this. I know it's probably not going to be the best video to explain this, and I'm probably not the best person at explaining this. Also, I apologize in advance. My art skills are pretty terrible. So, there will be a drawing that I attempted. As they say, an attempt was made. To start off, the lift system is pretty basic. You have some very basic components. For ease of convenience, I'm going to call it a bicycle chain. This is what it looks like. This is what I'm referring to. It looks like a bicycle chain. I know there is a name for it, and I cannot remember. It's something like a link master link chain or something. But anyway, there's a bunch of these little links that are put together, and this is what puts your bed out. And the important thing to remember is this right here is the driver's side of the camper. This is what I'm going to refer to as the driver's side. And then on the other side is what I will refer to as the passenger side. And I'm taking this terminology from cars because I don't know how else to describe this. This is important. And I will explain later why this is important. But for these campers, just know that your passenger side is always going to have the door that goes into the camper. The driver's side will never have the door. And you can actually see here why this matters. This is the crank right here. There's 2 points. There's one here, right in here, and there's one right in here. And this crank has a notch in it. If you watch my video where I raise this camper up and then lower it, you can see where I'm cranking, and you can see me insert this crank into both of these points. If you go to the other side, you will see points that look like this. But if you try to insert the crank into those points on the passenger side, nothing will happen. There's nowhere for that notch in this crank to catch. So when you are cranking this up and down, you will always do it from the driver's side because the lift system is on the driver's side. It's not on the passenger side, it's only on the driver's side. One of the best resources I have found for using is this Facebook group right here. They have got a wealth of information. I know Facebook. I don't love Facebook myself. I hardly use it, but this is one of the few things I do use it for. One of the things I recommend doing, check out the Files tab when you get into this group. If you have one, they have quite a few files in here for various Apaches. Most of this stuff is going to be for solid state. It skews a lot more towards the solid state because that's what most people have, but there is good information. Like, here's one for 67 through 69s. This lady had, I believe, a 67. and she put together a very good write-up on how to repair some damage to, you know, this rivet came out. This is a rivet and this is part of the lift system that holds up your roof right here. And one of these rivets popped off, and this is how she repaired it. But the one that we care about for today is this Apache service manual. And if you go through that list, you'll find it. But this is an Apache service manual for all Apache campers. And, you know, this right here is sort of your Bible. This has got some of the best information for trying to figure out this lift system. Like, all of this stuff, you can ignore this. You know, this gearbox rebuild kit, all of this. This right here, this is for the solid state campers. This is all for the solid state campers. You know, this solid state campers. All of this is solid state. You know, you have to keep going. Let's see, where is it? Not that one. See, like, this is a 70s lift system. You know, that's for an Eagle. You know, here's more of the tent campers. This right here on page 19, 68 to 69 bed mechanism, page 19 and page 20 and page 21 and 22 and 23 and 24, those are the pages that will apply to your camper. This is what we care about. In particular, we are looking at page 19. And this is, at its heart, this is how simple your bed mechanism is. And I'm not joking when I say this, but this right here, this is how simple your bed mechanism is. This is your entire bed mechanism for each end of your camper, compared to something like up here where we were seeing, you know, all of this other stuff, all of this, you know, all of this more complicated things, all of this or all of this. When people talk about having to rebuild the lift systems on their Apaches, this is what they're talking about. This is the gearbox they take apart, and they have all the teeth that are coming apart, and these chains, the chains right here that break all the time. You know, the wonderful thing about the one that we have in yours, if you're watching this, is we don't have any plastic in it. Everything is metal, so it tends, any failure point is typically going to be this chain right here. This chain right here, this chain 5590001 by this little asterisk, what this means is this loops over this sprocket. This chain right here is this chain that you're seeing right here. This sprocket right here is behind this little plastic triangle. This is the driver's side of the camper, and this is why I was saying it matters, because when you look at this chain, you can actually see this. This is normal for it to be seen like this, a little bit of slack in it. But that chain runs from right here all the way to back here. And so when you look at the inside of the camper, this is the back, and see, this is that little triangle that I showed you in this picture right here. But this is on the opposite end of the camper, and the chain runs along here, and you can actually see it. You can see it right there, just barely. But there's a dinette seat from about here to here, and then from here, about right there, to the front of the camper is the stove and sink. So when you're looking at the camper, you've got the dinette and the stove and sink cabinet in front of this chain. And the most common failure point that I've seen, I've seen very few failures, but the one I usually see is a link in this chain right here will break. And if you've ever repaired a bicycle chain, you can repair this. It's very easy. You just literally put in a new link. The hardest part about repairing this is you will have to take all these cabinets out. These cabinets, they're held in by L brackets. There's an L bracket, and you will have to take them apart. They come apart in two separate units. There's the dinette. This right here is the stove and sink area, and there are two brackets that are holding, or they're L brackets that run along here, along the sides and the front, and then this cabinet, you can see there's a hole here and a hole here. This is screwed into the side of the dinette, so you will have to take those screws out so that you can get this cabinet and the dinette out. So, in order to access this chain if you need to make repairs. So, I have put together, no holds barred, this absolutely fabulous diagram of my Apache camper. And I've labeled the passenger side of the camper, which has the door, and this is the driver's side. This right here is the chain I was talking about. This is the one that you are seeing right here. That is this chain right here. And when you are looking at, do you remember earlier when I mentioned this crank? You can see the crank here, and this little hole that it goes into, and a little hole back here. That is what you are seeing right here. Right behind that is this little plastic triangle, is this sprocket right here. This notch is fitting into this sprocket. When you turn this crank, you are turning this sprocket. So when I turn this crank, that sprocket, which is right behind that little thing, is spinning. And this chain is right behind this little plastic wedge, a triangle thing, and it is cranking this chain right here. You also have this lug that attaches to this sprocket, and then you have another longer part here that attaches to yet another sprocket. This sprocket right here, if you look underneath the beds, I don't have a good picture of it because I was not able to get one, but if you look under the beds, there's two little tracks under there, and if you look up inside of them, it looks like a bicycle chain inside of a track. Those two tracks, those bicycle chain inside of a track, is what is traveling on these two sprockets right here. And you can see they've got that chain right here. When you spin this crank, you are spinning this shaft, and you are spinning these three sprockets. These two sprockets are what send your bed out or bring it in. But you can crank on either end of this camper, and it'll send both beds out, and it'll raise the roof up. So, but if you're cranking, you're only cranking on one shaft and not the other. And that's where your third sprocket comes in, right here, and that's what this chain is for. This chain, which is the one you see running from the front of the camper to the back, is what connects this shaft to the shaft in the back. So I've got this illustrated here. This is the back of the camper. This is the front of the camper, where the hitch is. You've got your front bed and your rear bed. And I have a post in the Apache Camper website, or Preservation Society, that with this diagram in there. I know this is not a good picture and it's not a good diagram, but I can barely draw a rectangle. Straight lines are hard. But see, like, I've labeled these four sprockets as one. These two sprockets are connected to the outer ones by a lug. They use the chain number 3, which is this, and this. And they send that chain number 3, which is these things, in and out on the driver's side of the beds. Number 2. which is these sprockets right here. They're on the passenger side of the camper. They're connected to number 1 by this shaft right here. And they're going to send number 3 out. These are the ones that if you're on the passenger side, you'll see these little holes right here, and you're like, oh yeah, I can put the crank in on that side. You put the crank in on that side, they don't do anything. Number 3, like I said, these are the chains. If you go underneath the bed, you can see these. They're almost in like a track on the underside of the beds. They're riding on 1 and 2, these 2 sprockets right here. And then also I've got this sprocket and this sprocket. You know, these are the ones you can see from the outside. They're the ones that are inside this little triangle. And they're the ones that you can insert the crank in on the driver's side of the camper. Number 4, like I said, this is this chain that you can see from the inside of the camper. It runs along the inside here. This is what coordinates these beds. This is what makes these beds work together to move in and out when you start cranking here, or, you know, and to send the roof up and down. You can kind of see it here, but it's a little bit harder. It was harder for me to picture because this is only one side. And of course, these slides, these are on the side of the bed, and the bed just sort of slides in and out on those. Now, what they are talking about here, and I wanted to mention this because I've seen my camper doing it, and you can actually see this in the kind of in the video I did where I was opening and closing that camper. You'll see when I'm closing the camper, I think it's when I'm closing it, you can see one side is going up faster or slower than the other. So it's almost like one end is higher than the other. And these chains they call it jumping time. And what'll happen is as you're cranking it, you'll hear it start making like a popping or a banging noise. And what's happening is that this chain is jumping teeth on that gear. It's slipping. And so what you'll see, and the indicator that it's doing that, besides the horrible banging and popping noises, is you'll see that, you know, the front of it will be like further down than the back. You know, it'll be at an angle. And, you know, usually mine will straighten itself out, you know, as it goes further up or further down. But, you know, they're talking about, you know, this section right here, the bed timing procedure, they're talking about, you know, remedying that if, you know, your beds are out of sync. You know, sometimes, you know, like also this, you know, they're talking about these corner plates. That is this right here. That's where you're going to insert the crank, is your corner plate, is that little hole where you insert the crank. You know, and what they're saying is over time, those corner plate, you know, the drive chain, they call this the drive chain, that's this right here. You know, over time it can get loose, and this is how, you know, you can basically flip over your corner plate to help tighten things up so that you have less issues with that chain slipping and jumping those teeth. You know, and this is talking about the bed slides. I'll be honest, I don't know where to get plastic bed slides. And what they're talking about is if you look on here, this is what they're talking about, replacing this. I don't even know where to get these. The Apache Parts site, as far as I can tell, doesn't sell them. But, you know, here, if you need to know how to do it, you know, here's how you replace it. And we also have sprocket repair, which would be for these sprockets, you know, any of these 3 that are on the ends of the beds. So, and this would be how you would repair them. This entire document is within that Facebook group. You just have to look for it. It's the Apache Service Manual. And I've also seen copies of this floating around, like the Apache Owners Forum and several other places. So, the Facebook's not the only place to get it, but, it is out there. But, pages, if you're looking through it, 19 through 24 is what you care about. Nothing else really in this manual will apply. Most of it is for the solid state campers. But I hope that made sense. I really haven't seen anybody talk about the lift system for these. There's a lot less points of failure really for this lift system, and usually I don't see people having. When you look at the Facebook group, you see a lot of people are having problems with the younger campers. This is, what is this? This is the 70. Yeah, that's a 70. The solid state ones, they're not bad. It's just this is a far more complex lift system. With these, you don't just have a single little sprocket. You have these gearboxes. And some of these gearboxes, they're made of plastic. The gears are made of plastic, and while it's a very, robust plastic compared to now, they can break. These teeth can break off, and then it won't go up. One of the things that plagues a lot of these solid state campers, this right here is the chain, and what this is these are blocks of plastic that have two metal wires that go through each side, and over the years of going up and down, a lot of times these wires will break and then it'll jam and you won't be able to open it. But if you compare that to the lift system on the older campers, you really have far fewer points of failure. Now, it's not as smooth or as nice as the newer Apaches with the newer lift system, the solid state ones. And I can guarantee you, once you have to deal with one of these jumping time, it's a pain in the butt. But, it's fairly easily fixed most of the time if it breaks, because usually what's going to break is going to be your drive chain. So, anyway, I hope that made sense. I try to respond to comments as best I can. I know this is not a very good picture, and I apologize. But anyway, I hope this helps at least one person. Thanks for watching.